So first, I would like to ask George to say a little bit more on this Chinese Commonwealth, to be more specific, because you did give some example, like based on Iceland, primitive example, and can you say, probably you already have some idea about what the Chinese Commonwealth might be, what kind of mechanism, whatever we call this 邦联或国协. So, George, would you please say a little bit more on this?
The idea is, do we see a common future? If we see a common future, then we'll find a way, step by step, even though there may have to be detours to get there. But if we don't see a common future, then however close we are, in the end our paths will diverge. And when people talk, and they're very bright people on both sides of the street, when they start thinking, they look at their history, when they have the inspiration from other countries and from other civilizations, they say, no, we can do this first, we can do that first. You compare mainland Taiwan relations today with what it was in 1980, 1990, 2000. You're already much closer than before. What you now have would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. So 20 years from now, make it closer still. Don't move back, move forward. And I'm sure that when people sit down to talk, many ideas will come up, some will be discarded, others will be considered, some will be practical. And the important thing is benefit people, fishermen, farmers, small businessmen, industrialists, tourists, students, scientists, researchers. If there's benefit, then people get together, people will learn more, find out more. So for myself, my father was born in Singapore, his father was from China, my mother's from China. I tell my friends, learn more about China because it's going to become very big. If China's per capita GDP reaches half that of the US, it's a quarter now, then China's GDP will be equal to that of the US and EU combined. US and EU combined. Their domestic market is already as significant as the US. So whatever you do, whether as a scientist or as an employee or as a businessman, you cannot ignore China. And the more you study China, the more you say, yeah, I'm part of it. And to some extent, even as a Singaporean, I feel I'm a part of it. Because that's my ancestry. And you will feel a part of it. But if you say, no, I don't want to know China, you demonize China, and you put that into young people's minds, eventually they will find out. But only after painful lessons. So Lee Kuan Yew was once asked, what if despite everything the Taiwanese insist on going this way? His reply was, well, it's a question of the price they have to pay before they learn the lesson. So the reason why we have this conversation is to reduce the price that ordinary Taiwanese will have to pay. You look at Ukraine. It is an unbelievable tragedy to go back to where they were in February 23rd last year. It's the maximum position they can achieve now, after having lost hundreds of thousands of lives. For what? What have they gained? They could have avoided this position. The Taiwan ambassador, the Ukraine ambassador in Singapore, a dear friend, Pafo Sultansky, when the invasion happened, he wrote me an email how he avoided machine gun fire and tanks to make his way to Poland, where he had a son or a daughter working, and became the representative of the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry in Ukraine. When he was in Singapore, we had long conversations. He said, no, Russia will implode. Putin cannot remain. I said, but what if he does? So if you build all your hopes on the possibility that the other side will collapse, you will cut options off. And then in the end, you are trapped in a position which is very disadvantageous. So Taiwan now should open the possibilities for the future, not constrict them. And it's important that in the education of the young, the media, everyone has responsibility. But if in the end, people refuse, then we go back to what Lee Kuan Yew said. Then it's a matter of the price you have to pay before you turn back.
Of course, I know in current Taiwan that lots of people are thinking in a different way. And so that's the reason why we want to bring in different opinions. I have to say now, fewer and fewer people are willing to say what you just said. And so we are happy that we have this opportunity to bring your opinion to our general public. And I hope this idea can be spread. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, George. I agree with you that we demonizing China is not a good idea. We have to cope with China as it rises as a superpower in the world. But actually, as you know, China has been Taiwan's the largest trading partner already for quite some time. So we have maintained close economic cooperation and interaction. That is a fact. So at the same time, of course, we need to strengthen our dialogue and communication with the PRC for the future. I think that is the priority. But whether we can really get to the stage how to proceed with the so-called Chinese and the Commonwealth, I think maybe this is still a little bit far-fetched. Actually, I'm also curious about the concept of Chinese Commonwealth. As you know, the British Commonwealth and now called Commonwealth, it's a very loose association. So if you mean the Chinese Commonwealth is the relationship, for instance, between Singapore and the UK, or Singapore with China, then probably that will be more appealing, more attractive to the people in Taiwan. But again, it's very difficult to define. So what the Chinese Commonwealth really will look like, whether that will be attractive, whether that will be supported, whether that will be accepted by the people in Taiwan. So I think this is still a question. We need to try to find some interpretations or some explanation. So how do you respond to this?
Let me put it in this way. That's a close economic connection between Taiwan and mainland China have been years, and of course that gives us some foundation to move towards a Chinese Commonwealth or something similar. So of course then I need a clearer description about the Chinese Commonwealth, what it might be, how it looks like, and. But I have to say, even such a proposition is not purely economical, because the political decision is the most important thing. So other than explaining what the Chinese Commonwealth might be, I will also ask you to think about this. George says that the mainland China should not object to this idea. And but to my knowledge, I think this idea has been proposed before in different occasions. But to my knowledge, the mainland China government has never given any, they actually ignored this proposition, let alone given any positive response to it. So could this Chinese Commonwealth be a wishful thinking by us or by only a few people? I would like to hear some from Philip. Can you say, how do you think about 不管是邦联或者是国协, what's the ideal form that it may be, and also mainland China's attitude towards this?
Okay, thank you. I think I pretty much agree with Professor Guan's observation that in the past, though this idea has been proposed either through academic discussions or through some sort of second-track diplomacy, we have never heard any positive response from almost anybody of mainland China. I guess at least there are a number of practical obstacles to be overcome if we really want to enter into a stage of serious discussion about this by governments from both sides. The first is really the wide disparity in terms of comprehensive national power, economic size, so on and so forth, between Taiwan and China. And so that's really something drastically different from what we've seen in many successful models of supranational integration, such as EU. So that's the first obstacle. The second is that, as far as we know, Beijing's official canon about unification has been always focusing on a unitary state, rather than anything that would accommodate a formula like confederation or commonwealth. And this is related to the third obstacle. The third obstacle is that, taking EU as an example, such an integration model entails or permits the national representation in governmental international organization, which I think is pretty hard for Beijing to accept if Taiwan enjoys, for example, full membership in the UN. That takes a very strong political will on the part of Beijing. And I suspect even any leader, even though like a strongman like Xi Jinping, would be willing to do that, given the fact that China is facing currently mounting domestic challenges as well as external problems. Okay. The final one, I guess, is really about the sustainability of a model like Commonwealth or Confederation. Again, taking EU as an example, as one of the most common or the most frequently mentioned problem of EU is the problem of so-called democratic deficits. That means that throughout the process of long-term integration, there is the problem of various EU countries not paying sufficient attention to the need and demand or aspiration of grassroots citizens in their domestic context. Okay. So again, public opinion, for example, in Taiwan, is still very important, not only to initiate, but also to sustain such a supranational model of integration, such as Commonwealth or Confederation. So that's some of my observations.
What do you think?